purpose of Freethought Forum is to be vigilant to the encroachment of religion into government and to educate the general public as to what a freethinker is.
My thoughts give me power.
No scholar can map them.
No hunter can trap them. No person can deny. Die Gedanken sind frei. No person.
Welcome to Freethought Forum. I'm Catherine Fahringer, the producer of this show. We try to bring you exciting personalities and an exchange of ideas without all the yelling and screaming that goes on professional TV. We reach out to the community, we as Freethinkers, and try to find everyone who has a great idea about something. And we found a man today that is just terrific. And you're all familiar with him. It's Gilberto Hinojosa, and he writes a column for the Express News, but his real job is he's a professor of history and dean of graduate school, University of Incarnate Word. So I am very impressed to have him, and thank you for coming, Mr. Hinojosa.
Well, thank you for the invitation.
And to your left is Sally Chizek, the co-hostess. And we'd like to talk about some of the subjects of your columns.
I'm game.
All right, go ahead, Sally.
Okay, well, the one that really impressed me was the one about the city council going to the church for an old blessing.
Right.
Tell us about that.
Well, Father Virgilio Elizondo, who was rector of the cathedral, San Fernando Cathedral, and Father David Garcia, his successor, have tried to revive the central role of the cathedral in the life of the city of San Antonio. It had this central role in the Spanish and Mexican period. Everything revolved around the church. It was in the center of the city, geographic center of the city. People's lives, relationships were connected with the church. People were baptized and married and buried in the church. And in baptism and communion and confirmation and marriage, you have padrinos or sponsors, and they become co-parents. And so all kinds of relationships were formed through the church. One of the many things that happened at the church was that across the street in the Casas Reales, in the government building, would be elections. And after the elections were settled, the new council would then walk over to the church for a blessing. It's a lovely tradition. Father Virgilio Elizondo, I believe, revived it. Father Garcia does it as well. The members of the city council are invited voluntarily. They don't all have to come. They don't have to come if they don't want to. And it's a ecumenical service in which we talk about the importance and the center of God in our lives.
Do you find any conflict between church and state?
Well, frankly, I didn't actually think about it in the sense that I didn't reflect on the possibility that some would see it that way, since it was a voluntary act, a voluntary ceremony. I think that the Constitution and society in general see some sort of role of the divinity in our lives. I'd hate to go much beyond that, in the sense that anything we go beyond that, we move into areas where peoples of different faiths and so on interfere.
That's it. Yeah. That's the problem right there in a nutshell. The San Antonio that you're speaking of in the early days was Spanish, was Catholic, and so naturally, and everything, and it sounds cozy and warm and lovely, but now that we're so diverse,
I can see how there might be a problem, and I, as I've said, maybe I would have second thoughts about writing about it again. But I still think that society has a need to express that role that God has in our lives. Now, there's a problem moving beyond that in the sense that it does interfere with what we consider sacred and how we define it. The fact that the ceremony was voluntary takes care of some of the difficulties that might have.
Well,
Why?
I have a bit of a problem from, say, the government asking a supernatural being for guidance to lead the city.
Well, it's not that the government is asking, but the people, those who were invited were not invited. It wasn't like the city council was invited. It was the members of the city council that were invited. And this happens on a variety of things, in a variety of occasions. For example, at San Fernando, they asked those leaving for Desert Storm, that were leaving their families and risking their lives, to come in for a blessing. They asked the graduates, every year, the high school graduates and the college graduates. They asked those who want to come in for a blessing to come to the church. I know there are problems with where to draw the line, and it does present a difficulty, and I myself am very much in favor of as much neutrality as possible. I have great difficulties with people who would like to involve religious beliefs within the context of schools and so on. You have this situation, however, where you have adults who are invited to express themselves in a religious way, and in some kind of a collective manner of some sort. I don't think they came over as a city council in the sense of in the Spanish-Mexican period, where the elections were certified, and then everybody walked across the plaza into the church, and so on. But rather, it was a Sunday in which those elected officials were invited to come in.
but they do pray, don't they, for them to do their jobs well and all that? So
I think,
here we are.
and I think it's valid. I think that most that by the same token that we have to respect those who do not believe, I think those who do not believe have to respect those who do believe. And if
Yeah, but not on my dime, you know.
they
I'm
weren't on
talking-
your dime. They weren't. They certainly weren't on your dime. They were on their own personal dime.
Oh, well, wait a minute. I thought you said they walked from the council offices over to
No,
the
I'm saying
church.
this is the way it used to be.
Oh,
You
that's
know.
the way it was in the 1700s.
That's in the
Okay.
17 and early 1800s. The elections were certified, and then the members of the city council then walked across, for a blessing. But this was I think it was a Sunday afternoon, and they were just invited that on this particular day, those wishing to come in, they weren't all there.
Yeah.
They weren't all there. Some of those who came were not Catholic. Some of those who came may not have even been believers. And they came as an expression of solidarity with the community. We have a pluralist society, a society with different ethnic groups, different cultural tradition, different beliefs, and so on. And I think we need to respect one another. And the issue, I think, is imposition. The issue is imposition. And this wasn't something that was imposed. Those who did not came weren't docked any money.
Yeah.
They weren't looked bad upon. There wasn't anybody taking attendance or anything of that sort. But I think that those who do not believe have to respect those who do. And in the sense that this is an important underpinning of who we are, our belief in God. Now, the issue is different, I think, when we're talking about adults, as opposed to when we're talking about children. The teaching of religion in public schools would certainly be, beyond the line, and I think that's related to the fact that that often parents aren't doing their own job in transferring their beliefs to their children, and then they get the schools to do this for them. And that's obviously wrong.
Obviously.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's obviously wrong. But for the for a church or a group to invite public officials to participate is it's a perfectly natural thing, since most Americans are believers. I don't see anything wrong.
Well, I think sometimes they might just say they'd go because it's politically correct to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if it's that's their problem. But nobody was taking roll. Nobody was taking roll. They didn't get docked their pay. They get paid very little to begin with.
Yeah, I know. Hardly any,
But I think there's, I think what we're talking about here is an issue of mutual respect, and I think it would be wrong, for example, if they insisted that the members of the city council take part in a Catholic ceremony or something like that. Mm-hmm. If it was a rule. By the same token, you know, it works the other way around. The coin has two sides. And it is those who feel that this is important in their lives, who's important in everything that they do. I think my belief is very important in the nitty-gritty of what I do every day at the university. I mean, I spent a lot of time this academic year working on the graduate bulletin, which is our catalog. And we spent a lot of time, endless time, in committee meetings debating academic policy. Mm-hmm. In fact, when we changed from Incarnate Word College, as you will remember, we used to be called,
yes,
to University of the Incarnate Word, I suggested that because of the countless meetings that we have about academic issues, about doing our job better, that we should change the name, not to the University of the Incarnate Word, but to the University of Our Lady of Perpetual Meetings. So that
that's a long name.
It's a long name. Well, you know, you have this Our Lady of Perpetual, you know, sorrow.
Yes, that's what I said.
So Our Lady of Perpetual Meetings, you know, would be. Well, when I'm doing academic policy, when I get up in the morning to do to apply myself to do what's best for the students for academic policy, I think my faith in God influences what I do. And I think it would be the same thing for the council members. And so everything that I do is influenced by that. And I would respect that of others in doing other jobs. Whether it's a road crew, or it's running a television camera, whether it's being in a business or being in government, I think people's beliefs influence how they operate. They can go to church in the sense that to say, Lord, make me do this, help me to do what I do for the sake of the people. Help me in what I do, in making the decisions I do as a city council person. I think that's perfectly valid. I don't have any problems with that.
I have a problem with religion overall as far as having a hammerlock on morality, because to me, religion, in the name of religion, people have committed some pretty terrible things.
Oh, yes.
And
the Pope has just apologized.
Yeah, but he didn't go far enough.
No, he didn't.
Not doing anything for the Holocaust, the Crusades, you know, the Inquisition, the torturing of people. You know, we've done that. And the problem is all religions have done that.
They're pretty mean. That old Calvin thing, he was pretty awful. And
it's not like we have the good guys in one group and the bad guys in the others.
Yeah. In the name of religion, so long as it's in the name of religion, it's supposed to be good.
Well,
regardless of how bad it is.
Okay, but because those mistakes have been made, doesn't mean that religion has no role. I think religion has a very important role in the lives of everybody.
If you're male.
Pardon me?
If you're a male.
Yeah.
If you're a female,
I think
you
as
are
well. Okay. Religions as organizations have been patriarchal.
Yes.
But that goes against the very nature of the very basic religions, that as sons and daughters of God, we hold the same equality. And because things have been done wrong in the name of religion, doesn't mean that religion is wrong. I mean, that's throwing the baby out with the bathwater, whatever the expression is.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
The bathwater out with the baby, I don't know.
No, throwing the baby.
Yeah.
I don't learn this language yet.
No, you're absolutely right. Well, the thing is, now turn yourself around and pretend. I mean, according to you, that you hope that everyone will bring his relationship with God into whatever he does regarding other people, which would be great if that God were really good all the way through. But something happens so often that it doesn't. Now, for instance, we are free thinkers. And believe me, we are in the minority. And this puts us in a terrible position. We get less respect, in fact, none at all sometimes, and we are treated as, second-class citizens. George Bush said some terrible things about us.
Well, I'm not going to get into a political situation because you could pick either side. I mean, but admittedly, it's a matter of what I was speaking about earlier, is that we need to respect one another.
Yeah, but it needs to come from the 80% to the 20% or the 85% to
and it behooves those, the 80% to respect the 20%.
Yeah.
Because especially when you see, if you look at one aspect of Christianity, this was in its origin a marginalized group, and it was in fact
cult.
It was in fact a subset of the Jewish faith, but the issue that is very strong in what Christ taught was in fact respect for the outsider. If you look at things like his who he admires is those who have been marginalized, that he was able to cross lines, speaking to the woman at the well, which is something males would not do, and so on. So you see Christ crossing lines in respect of others, those who were maligned. And one of the worst characters in that society was the tax collector, because the tax collectors
Don't drink to that.
today. Well, the tax collectors used to basically it was a bounty. They would
get what they could, and the more they got, the better they got paid.
That's right. The more they got, the more they got to keep, and so they would never tell how much they actually had to turn in. And so the tax collector was someone who was hounding people, someone who was badgering, and someone who was a terrible person in that society. And Christ said, "There's forgiveness for the tax collector."
Not from me.
Oh, yeah. Well, what can we say?
And he doesn't forgive you either.
That's a
the
joke.
Tax collector.
But the fact of the matter is, I think that what we're talking about is we need to promote a society where there is respect.
Yeah.
Where there's respect for the unbelievers, those who do not believe in God, and there's a respect also for the believers. And within that context, I don't think that every sign of religious expression is wrong. As indeed every call that is made by those who do not believe is wrong. And so just that we have to not paint with a broad brush.
That's why we do this program. See, we try to meet people and show them we're just people. We're just as human as you are.
Well,
and we're really quite normal, and we're really very moral, but we don't look to a higher power for it. We use our heads.
Well, this is a role which throughout the centuries, Catholics, or Christians, I should say, have struggled. And that is, what is the role of reason vis-a-vis the role of faith? And it has been a constant struggle between those who say, there's a famous saying, we have Christ. This is in the year 300s. We have Christ. Why do we need Athens? So we have faith. Why do we need philosophy? And so this argument has been going back and forth, the role of reason and the role of faith, and how those two function together. And it's not something that is clear and evident, but the Christianity has had a large history of respecting the role of faith, the role the role of reason, and in trying to understand faith. It's not that they have been reasonable all the time, but
Nobody's reasonable.
But wouldn't
all
you
the
say
time.
you have to suspend your reason to have faith?
well, to some extent, that's what faith calls for. Some
Yes.
suspension of reason. Some philosophers, some existential philosophers that operate outside of the faith also talk about an element of suspension of reason in human life, even without faith. And for example, one of the areas where that suspension of reason takes place is in the relationship between two persons. In the commitment that people make to one another, there's a certain leap that is made. Not everything is reasonable. Not everything is clear and evident, especially in human relationships. And so some philosophers, existentialists, speak of a leap, even within the very humanistic context. So, yes, faith calls for a leap. It calls for a big leap, but ordinary human life calls for some leaps as well.
Such as?
Well, the relationship, the commitments that two people make to one another.
But you understand the difference in personality, if that's what you're talking about.
Well, it's not
or
just
what-
a psychological thing. I think I think that's involved, obviously. You don't want to make this leap too big.
I mean, there's such a thing as give and take.
Let's have
There
a
is.
reasonable leap.
That's right. It has to be a reasonable leap within reason. But there is a leap made that in human relationships, not everything is understood. Even in human relationship, even if you don't believe in God, there's elements of mystery that are there. There's elements of things like, beauty.
Oh yeah, we dig beauty.
we believe in
We dig
beauty.
awe.
And you can't explain that. There are things you can't explain. There's an element of mystery in human life apart from faith.
Yeah, the mystery of the universe, the mystery
mystery
of
of
the
the universe.
cosmos, the
That's-
mystery of
that's
why
right.
we are here.
That's right. Or as some would say, have you ever listened to the trees speak? What wisdom does nature have to tell us? And so on. It's not something that's articulated. It's not something that's reasoned. It's something that is given. It amounts a leap of some kind.
I've often thought that actually there's no difference between people who believe and people who don't, because one of them calls this mysterious thing God, and the other calls it nature.
So you see, it's not all reasonable. It's
Well,
not all.
there
reasonable
is
to me.
nature. It is real.
It is real, and there's an element of mystery in our lives that we can't explain completely. If you want, faith is an expansion of that.
We find it kind of odd, though, like you teach the Bible and a bush talks, a snake talks, and no one thinks that's odd?
Well, in a sense, you could look at that, and yet you would have, the phrase that I used, was a phrase from Native Americans. Have you ever listened to the trees speak? What wisdom do they have for you?
But I don't think they really mean that it speaks.
No, they're going to talk.
No, but it means it says something. It has meaning, and so what I'm pointing to is the fact that there is a mystery in nature, and that not everything that we do as human beings we can reason out. Hopefully, we try to reason out as much as we can, but there comes a point where we have a world without mystery, a world without love, the kinds of things that are not explainable. And so, and so I would say that even in a world without faith, there is mystery, there is hidden meaning, and so on. In a sense, you have all the much more of that with faith. So I don't see a problem. I think the problem lies in whether or not we have respect for one another.
Mm-hmm. Well,
yes. Well, I think
do
we
unto
should have
others.
respect for one another. But I just wonder if
I want my
instead of
share.
the Catholic Church, if they had turned it around and said the council should come to a Protestant church, for instance, or a Jewish church, and synagogue, excuse me. Would the council, the ones that are very Catholic, because usually Catholics don't really want to go to another church, true?
Well, I mean, you have all kinds. I've gone to all churches because I feel that we're all worshiping God together. I've been to synagogues. I've been to Protestant churches. So I wouldn't have a problem going to pray at a Protestant church. The Pope has just gone to pray in Jewish places of prayer.
Now, there was a time when
you
were told that you couldn't go.
That's right. There was a time when and I think that was wrong.
Yes.
And I think that was wrong because it was a sign of lack of respect. Okay.
Or fear, some sort
or
of fear.
fear that something bad was going to happen. Of course, it was silly. It was wrong.
Right.
So I think that whoever issues out the invitation is trying to say, look, for many of us, God plays a role in the way we carry out our lives, in the way we do our jobs. If you wish to come to this church to join us in prayer so that God will help us as He helps many of us, or she helps many of us, as the case might be, as God helps us in our daily lives, let us express this common prayer. And many came. I don't know if everyone came. I didn't take roll. Nobody took roll. Okay?
Yeah.
And it was a very beautiful ceremony. I had a little part in it, in which I talked about the historic story, the story in history.
Well, you know what? This could go on and on. Would you consider coming back sometime? I can't believe, but I'm getting the time signal here. And I wanted to ask you one question before she starts giving me this. Ecumenical, what exactly does that mean?
Well, ecumenical,
I meant to look it up.
Ecumenical means that it's open to various faiths, that it's open to
Okay.
various beliefs.
My gosh, on that we've got to end, and tune in again because we're going to get Mr. Hinojosa back, okay? I guarantee you, if I have to drag him here. Thank you
for
so
the
much.
invitation. Thank you for the invitation.
I think as I please, and this gives me pleasure.
My conscience decrees, this right I must treasure.
My thoughts will not cater
To duke or dictator, no person can deny. Die Gedanken sind frei, no